Hi, I'm Mina.
And I'm Yules.
Thanks for tuning in to Artificially Informed.
Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today, well, it feels like trying to map a hurricane while writing it. We've got this incredible flood of global data, breakthroughs in space, in physics, human biology, just amazing stuff.
Right, but happening at the exact same time as, political systems seem completely stuck, grinding to a halt, and these awful humanitarian crises just keep unfolding.
That contrast is really stark, isn't it? Science just accelerating like crazy while governance and diplomacy feel like they're struggling to even keep up.
That's exactly the story we're seeing in the material we've gathered. It paints a picture of a world moving at warp speed technologically, but politically, not so much. So our deep dive today is about pulling those threads together.
Trying to make sense of it all, extracting the key insights you need to really understand what's going on from, I don't know, the quantum level right up to geopolitics and finance.
Exactly. We'll connect the dots between the nature of reality itself and, well, the very real price of peace, or the lack of it.
Okay, let's do it. We're going to start way out there, far from Earth, looking at some of these new frontiers in science and space. Some pretty mind-bending discoveries to unpack first. All right, first up, the James Webb Space Telescope. JWST, it just keeps delivering, doesn't it?
It really does. Changing astronomy almost daily, it feels like.
And it's looking at places we basically dismissed before, like this object, Wolf 1130C, and it found something potentially revolutionary, phosphine gas.
Phosphine, yeah. Okay, that immediately sets off alarm bells for astrobiologists.
Yeah.
It's one of those findings that forces you to reevaluate everything you thought you knew.
Because phosphine, here on Earth, it's almost always linked to life, right? Like microbes in swamps or animal guts, places without oxygen.
Exactly. Anaerobic life produces it. It's incredibly reactive, toxic stuff. Doesn't hang around long unless something is actively making it. Now, there are potential non-biological ways to make it, maybe deep inside gas giants under immense pressure, high-energy processes. But finding in the atmosphere of Wolf 1130C, that's the shocker.
Okay, so why is it so shocking for this specific object? What is Wolf 1130C?
That's the key thing. It's not a planet. It's a brown dwarf.
A brown dwarf. Remind me, that's like a failed star. Too big to be Jupiter, but too small and cool to actually start fusion like our sun.
You got it. We've always classified these things as completely inhospitable, no stable surface, no liquid water, weird atmospheres, just totally uninhabitable by any standard definition we had.
So detecting phosphine there, even if it's not definitively life, just the possibility.
It radically expands the search parameters for astrobiology.
Yeah.
If it's confirmed, and if they can rule out those exotic non-biological origins, it means life might exist in environments we previously considered completely impossible. Forget the traditional Goldilocks zone. Maybe life finds a way in much stranger, harsher conditions.
That is fascinating, pushing the boundaries of where life might be. Let's bring that search for habitable conditions, specifically water a bit closer to home, Saturn's moon, Enceladus.
Ah, yes, Enceladus. We've suspected for a while, thanks to the Cassini mission, that it has a hidden ocean.
Cassini flew through those plumes, right? Geysers erupting from the South Pole, full of water ice and organic molecules.
Exactly. Strong evidence for a subsurface liquid water reservoir. But the big step forward now comes from supercomputer modeling. Really complex physical simulations.
And what did the computers show?
They basically confirmed that the tidal forces from Saturn's gravity, the constant squeezing and stretching of the moon, could generate enough internal heat to maintain a huge liquid ocean beneath that icy crust. It's not just a theory anymore. The physics supports it.
So the models back up the idea of a stable, warmish liquid water environment miles below the ice.
Which makes Enceladus, a prime target for future missions looking for extraterrestrial life. It ticks a lot of the boxes. Liquid water, energy source, organic molecules.
Water really is the key ingredient, isn't it? But speaking of exciting science, sometimes things get in the way, like Comet 3I-80
Oh, right. That's an interstellar comet, correct.
Yeah.
One that came from outside our solar system.
Exactly. Only the third one we've ever detected, I think. A really rare chance to study material from another star system up close. Understand how stuff gets distributed across the galaxy.
Huge opportunity. So what's the issue?
Well, the timing couldn't be worse. The deep political issues in the U.S., specifically the government shutdown we just went through, it apparently really hampered the ability to track and study it properly.
Ah, Lack of funding, staff furloughed at observatories and agencies that would normally coordinate this kind of observation.
Seems like it. Just a stark example of how, political gridlock on Earth can directly interfere with exploring the universe. Kind of depressing, really.
It is. That contrast is something we keep seeing. Grand cosmic discoveries happening alongside, well, human dysfunction. Which actually leads us nicely into fundamental physics, this University of British Columbia study. It's suggesting something profound about reality itself.
Right. The idea that the universe requires, what was the phrase? Non-algorithmic understanding. What does that even mean?
It's deep and pretty challenging. Basically, an algorithm is just a set of rules, right? A step-by-step procedure a computer can follow to solve a problem. Think of any computer program.
Okay, like a recipe for calculation.
Sort of. This study, drawing on some heavy mathematical logic like Gödel's incompleteness theorems, suggests there are fundamental aspects of our universe, maybe even mathematical truths, that cannot be figured out or proven by any finite set of rules, no matter how complex the algorithm or how powerful the computer.
Hold on. If reality isn't fully algorithmic, what does that mean for people who think maybe we're living in a giant computer simulation?
And it throws a huge wrench in that idea, doesn't it? If the universe itself contains non-computable elements, then no simulation, no matter how sophisticated, could ever perfectly replicate it. It'd always be incomplete.
So reality is richer, more complex than pure computation.
That's the implication. The researchers even speculate that this non-algorithmic understanding might be linked to consciousness itself. That maybe the human mind's ability to grasp truths beyond step-by-step rules is what sets it apart from just being a complex machine.
Wow, okay, that's a lot to process. The universe might not be computable. And this could have massive implications for artificial intelligence, or AI, too.
Absolutely. If there are aspects of reality or even thought that inherently can't be broken down into algorithms, then AI, which is fundamentally algorithmic, could have hard limits. It might never truly replicate human consciousness or fully understand the universe in the same way we do.
That's a staggering thought, especially when we juxtapose it with the very practical, very human struggles of just getting things into space, like the update on Blue Origin's New Glenn rocket launch.
Right. They were launching NASA's ESCAPADE mission. That's the National Aeronautics and Space Administration.
Twin spacecraft heading to Mars, right, to study its atmosphere and magnetosphere.
Exactly. A really important science mission for NASA, and also a huge deal for Blue Origin.
Yeah.
They need to prove their New Glenn rocket is reliable, especially for these big government contracts. It's supposed to be reusable, a competitor to SpaceX's Starship eventually.
Yeah, they had another scrub. This was the second major attempt, wasn't it?
It was. And again, delays. Reports mentioned bad weather, which is common enough.
But the reason that really stood out, the almost absurd part. Cruise ship traffic near the launch site.
Slight chuckle.
Yes.
Apparently, a cruise ship wandered into the restricted maritime zone near Launch Complex 36 down in Florida. An interplanetary mission, years of planning, millions of dollars, held up because people were queuing for the buffet.
Chuckle. You couldn't make it up. It's just the perfect symbol of our times, maybe. Cutting-edge space exploration bumping up against, well, everyday life.
It really highlights the growing pains of commercial spaceflight, doesn't it? It's not just rocket science anymore. It's coordinating airspace, maritime traffic, weather, all these complex logistics. The stakes are high, and delays happen, sometimes for truly bizarre reasons.
Indeed. Okay, before we leave the pure science realm, let's talk about something happening closer to home, in our oceans. Some unsung heroes, mycobacteria.
MISO. That stands for microbes that interact with sulfide and oxidize. Tiny little powerhouses.
And what do they do that's so important?
They perform a vital function, especially in areas of the ocean that are struggling. They use iron minerals dissolved in seawater to essentially neutralize toxic hydrogen sulfide.
Hydrogen sulfide, that's the rotten egg smell, right?
Yeah.
Bad stuff.
Very bad stuff for most marine life. Mycobacteria convert it into harmless sulfate. This is crucial for keeping the ocean's chemistry balanced.
And where is this needed most? You mentioned struggling areas.
In marine dead zones, these are parts of the ocean suffering from hypoxia, severe lack of oxygen, often caused by fertilizer runoff from farms, pollution, and made worse by warming waters due to climate change.
So no oxygen, things die, and then this toxic sulfide builds up.
Exactly. It makes these zones even more hostile. The mycobacteria are like a natural cleanup crew, working constantly to detoxify these environments, preventing the sulfide from spreading further.
So as climate change potentially expands these dead zones, these little microbes are working overtime.
They really are. Their biological process seems to be much faster and more efficient at removing sulfide than purely chemical reactions would be. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the smallest organisms play the biggest roles in maintaining planetary health, especially when the system is under stress from us.
Okay, let's shift gears now. From the vastness of space and the depths of the ocean, we're zooming right into the human body, down to our DNA. There are some incredible advances happening in personalized medicine, really aiming to change how we treat complex diseases.
Yes, this is a huge area of development, moving away from the old one-size-fits-all approach, especially in mental health. There's some groundbreaking work.
Like this big initiative involving Sweden, Denmark, and Germany, focusing on major depressive disorder, MDD.
Right. They're using something called polygenic risk scores, or PRS, to try and predict how patients will respond to different antidepressants.
Okay, polygenic risk scores. Let's break that down. It's not like testing for a single gene defect, like for cystic fibrosis or something.
No, exactly. MDD, like many common diseases, heart disease, diabetes isn't caused by one single gene. It's influenced by tiny variations across hundreds, maybe thousands, of genes, each adding a small amount of risk or influencing response to treatment. A PRS essentially adds up all those little genetic nudges across your genome.
To get an overall picture of your predisposition, or in this case, how likely you are to benefit from a specific type of drug.
Precisely. The goal is revolutionary for psychiatry. Identify the most likely effective antidepressant for a specific patient before they even start taking it.
That would be huge. It could end that awful trial and error cycle so many people go through, right? Trying one drug for months, dealing with side effects, finding it doesn't work, switching to another.
Exactly. It's often a really demoralizing and lengthy process. If this genetic testing works as hoped, it could dramatically shorten the time to effective treatment, reduce suffering, and probably save healthcare costs too. True personalization.
We're seeing a similar push for personalization in managing heart health, too. This blood pressure treatment efficacy calculator sounds interesting.
Yeah, this is basically an online tool, but it's built on a mountain of data. They analyzed almost 500 clinical trials, covering over 100,000 patients.
Wow. And what does it do?
It helps doctors predict which type of blood pressure medication is most likely to work best for an individual patient. Instead of just starting with a standard choice like a diuretic or a beta blocker, they can input patient details and get a tailored prediction.
And why is that so important? Small differences matter.
Hugely. The data is clear. Even lowering systolic blood pressure by just 5 points 5 millimilli Hg significantly cuts the risk of stroke and heart disease. So getting the right drug faster makes a real difference. This calculator aims to turn all that trial data into practical, personalized guidance for doctors.
And sticking with heart health, there's this Intermountain Health study on vitamin D3 for heart attack survivors. This also seems to hinge on personalization.
It does. There have been lots of studies on vitamin D and heart health before, but the results were often kind of mixed, often disappointing, didn't seem to show a clear benefit across the board.
So what did Intermountain Health do differently?
Instead of giving everyone the same standard dose of vitamin D3, they tailored the dose for each patient based on regular blood tests. They monitored their vitamin D levels and adjusted the supplement dose to reach a target level.
And the result?
A pretty remarkable 50% reduction in the risk of having another heart attack or major cardiac event among these survivors who got the personalized dosing.
50%? That's huge. So it wasn't that vitamin D doesn't help, it was that the way it was being given, the generic dosing, wasn't effective for everyone.
Seems that way. Personalizing the dose based on individual needs made all the difference. Again, moving beyond one size fits all.
Okay, so we're getting better at prevention and personalized treatment. What about critical complications? There's news from Thailand about treating MAA.
Right, MALA. That's metformin-associated lactic acidosis. Metformin is a really common, very effective drug for type 2 diabetes, but in rare cases, it can lead to this extremely dangerous buildup of lactic acid in the blood. It can be fatal.
And what did the hospital in Thailand do?
They essentially streamlined their emergency response. They set up a specific rapid protocol for quickly diagnosing MAA and getting patients onto specialized high-intensity dialysis very fast.
So optimizing the process, the logistics of care?
Exactly. And by doing that, by acting faster and more effectively, they significantly reduced the mortality rate for this severe complication. Shows how improving systems and processes can save lives in critical care.
These advances are incredible. Curing more, treating better, personalizing medicine. But then we get to the edge cases where science starts to touch on not just fixing what's broken, but maybe engineering something new. That brings us to designer babies.
Yeah, this is where things get ethically very complex very quickly. We're talking about the U.S. startup Preventive.
Backed by some big Silicon Valley names, right? Sam Altman, Brian Armstrong.
That's right. And their stated goal is to use embryo editing technology, think CRISPR, to eliminate hereditary diseases before a child is even born.
Okay, eliminating devastating genetic diseases like Huntington's or Tay-Sachs. On the surface, that sounds purely therapeutic, right?
That's the argument they make. But the technology itself, editing the germline DNA, the genes that get passed down through generations, opens a Pandora's box of ethical and safety concerns, which is why it's currently banned in the U.S. and many other countries. Preventative is actively looking for locations outside the U.S. to operate.
So what are the main fears? Why the prohibition?
Well, first, safety. We just don't fully understand the long-term consequences of editing human embryos. Could there be unforeseen side effects, generations down the line? Second, the slippery slope argument. Where do you draw the line?
From eliminating terrible diseases to maybe enhancing other traits, intelligence, height, athletic ability.
Exactly. That's the fear of eugenics creeping back in. And third, access. This kind of technology would likely be incredibly expensive, at least initially. So, would it become a tool for the wealthy elite to essentially improve their offspring, creating an even wider gap, maybe even a biological gap, between the haves and have-nots?
That's a chilling thought. And didn't one of the backers, Armstrong, say something really provocative about how to win public acceptance?
Reportedly, yes. Yeah. Suggesting the best way forward was just to, showcase a healthy, genetically engineered child, which understandably didn't exactly calm the ethical anxieties swirling around this.
No, probably the opposite. It really highlights the tension. The technology is advancing incredibly fast, the investment is there, but society, legally and ethically, we're nowhere near figuring out how to handle this kind of power responsibly. Okay, let's shift now into the world of technology, and specifically AI, artificial intelligence. There seems to be a real debate raging. Are we in the middle of a genuine tech revolution fueled by AI, or is it more of an investment bubble?
That's the billion-dollar question, isn't it? And you see evidence for both sides. On the boom side, the investment continues to pour in. Look at Scribe.
Scribe, what do they do?
They just hit a $1.3 billion valuation. Their main product, Scribe Optimize, is basically designed to show businesses the concrete return on investment, the ROI, they're getting from deploying AI.
So trying to answer that question, we spent all this money on AI. What did we actually get for it?
Exactly. Moving beyond just hype about efficiency and providing hard numbers on cost savings or improved decision-making, investors are demanding that now show me the money.
And then there's Amanda Callow's new venture, One Mind. She founded 6 Cents before, right?
That's her. And she just raised $30 million for One Mind, which has a very direct goal, creating human replacement AI sales tools.
Human replacement doesn't mince words.
Not at all. She talks about creating AI superhumans that can handle complex sales processes, do product demos, manage customer relations, all without a human involved. It's a very aggressive vision of automation targeting high-value jobs.
Okay, so that's the boom narrative. Big money, bold claims about automation taking over. But you said there's a counter-narrative, signs of a potential bubble.
Absolutely. Because when you look at actual adoption rates, the picture is different. Despite all the hype and investment, the percentage of large companies actively using AI has actually decreased slightly recently. Fell from about 14% down to under 12%.
Really? It went down. Why would that be?
Well, a couple things. One is the cost. Running these powerful AI models takes enormous computing power, which means huge energy bills. Plus, you need specialized talent, which is expensive. So the actual operational costs are proving much higher than maybe some expected.
And the return on investment isn't always clear yet, like Scribe is trying to solve.
Exactly. For many early applications, the promised gains haven't materialized or they're limited. So some companies are pulling back, rethinking their strategies. You got this tension. Sky-high valuations based on future potential, but sluggish or even declining real-world deployment and profitability right now.
Sounds like the market might be heading for a correction, a shakeout where only the AI companies providing real demonstrable value survive.
That seems likely. The focus is shifting from general, exploratory AI to specialized tools that solve very specific, expensive business problems, like Scribe Optimize is trying to do. The hype cycle might be cooling off, replaced by a demand for practical results.
Okay, interesting dynamic there. Let's move from AI specifically to some moves by the big digital giants. Apple seems to be pushing satellite connectivity further on the iPhone.
Yeah, they're moving well beyond just the emergency SOS texting feature they introduced a while back.
So what's new?
The plan is to integrate satellite connectivity more broadly. Things like enabling offline navigation in Apple Maps, even when you have zero cell signal, useful for remote areas, hiking, that sort of thing. They're also bringing it to the Apple Watch and opening it up so third-party apps can potentially use it too.
So making their devices more useful in places off the traditional grid, expanding the ecosystem's reach.
That seems to be the strategy, making sure your iPhone or watch is useful literally anywhere on the planet.
Meanwhile, over at X, formerly Twitter, Elon Musk's AI, Grok, keeps stirring things up.
Grok, named after that term from Heinlein's Stranger in a Strange Land, meaning deep, intuitive understanding.
Right. And it's supposed to be different, maybe more conversational, maybe simulate emotions, but it's getting criticized.
Yeah, the main critique focuses on its perceived political bias. Observers, and there's data backing this up, point to a noticeable lean to the right in its responses and the narratives it generates on various topics.
So the concern is it's reflecting Musk's own views and maybe amplifying them on the platform.
That's the worry, that it's not just providing information, but shaping it with a specific slant, contributing to the polarization we already see online. It raises questions about transparency and bias in these large language models, especially when they're deployed on major social platforms.
And speaking of AI making complex things easier, Google Maps is rolling out new tools.
Yes, using their latest AI models, like Gemini, they're aiming to let pretty much anyone create custom interactive maps.
Even if you don't know how to code.
That's the idea. You describe what you want the map to show or do, and the AI agent helps generate the code and the interface. It could be used for anything from planning community projects to visualizing complex data geographically.
So democratizing map making, essentially, taking it beyond just navigation.
Pretty much, making powerful visualization tools accessible to a much wider audience.
Okay, one more tech item, this time in finance. Hong Kong is making a big play with tokenized bonds.
Right, using blockchain technology to issue government bonds. The idea is to make the whole process, issuing, trading, settling, faster, cheaper, more efficient.
Trying to position Hong Kong as a leader in digital finance innovation.
Exactly. They're aiming high, hoping this helps solidify their status as a major financial hub, maybe even boost their credit rating. They've already issued about $1 billion worth of these digital notes.
But there are challenges.
Definitely. They face stiff competition from places like Singapore and Dubai, which are also pushing hard in the digital asset space. And interestingly, the current legal framework in Hong Kong still kind of shoehorns these tokenized bonds into traditional bond regulations.
Yeah.
There's some legal ambiguity there.
So they're innovating technologically, but the legal and regulatory side hasn't fully caught up yet.
That seems to be the case. It creates a bit of friction as they try to establish themselves as the go-to place for this kind of financial technology.
Let's turn now to geopolitics, where unfortunately the shadows seem very long right now. Conflicts, crises, difficult diplomacy. We start with a really human story from the Israel-Gaza conflict.
Yes, a moment that underscores the immense personal cost. The remains of an Israeli soldier, Lieutenant Hadar Golden, were recovered and returned.
He was killed back in 2014, wasn't he? During that conflict with Hamas, his family has been waiting nearly a decade.
An agonizing wait. His remains were reportedly found in a tunnel in Rafah, in southern Gaza, and then handed over via the International Committee of the Red Cross, the ICRC. Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke about the family finally being able to give him a proper Jewish burial.
Just highlights the deep scars and the long process of dealing with the missing and the deceased, even amidst the current ongoing tensions and negotiations.
Absolutely. And turning to the war in Ukraine and Russia, the tit-for-tat attacks on energy infrastructure have really escalated.
Ukraine used drones to hit targets inside Russia.
Yes, reports indicate strikes on energy facilities in the Belgorod and Voronezh regions of Russia apparently caused disruptions to heating and power for tens of thousands of people, particularly in Belgorod.
And Russia's response.
It was described as perhaps the most severe attack on Ukraine's energy grid so far in this phase of the war. Heavy missile and drone barrages targeting power plants and substations,
Causing major blackouts.
huge impacts. Reports mentioned up to 100,000 residents in Kharkiv, which is Ukraine's second-largest city, losing power. Multiple state-owned energy facilities were hit hard. It seems like a deliberate strategy to cripple infrastructure and inflict hardship as winter approaches.
This kinetic war is also happening alongside a battle over money, specifically frozen Russian assets.
Right. The European Union, the EU, has been pushing this idea for a while now, using the interest generated from roughly $300 billion in Russian central bank assets that were frozen after the invasion.
Using that money to help Ukraine.
That's the plan. potentially generating up to $140 billion over time to fund Ukraine's military defense and eventually reconstruction efforts.
But not everyone in the EU is on board.
No. Slovakia's Prime Minister, Robert Fico, has come out strongly against it. He's out to block the initiative.
What's his reasoning?
He argues it's legally questionable, that going around established international law regarding sovereign assets is dangerous. He also expressed concerns it would just escalate the conflict, maybe prolong it by years, and lead to unpredictable repercussions. Russia, of course, has consistently called any seizure theft and threatened retaliation. So it's a really contentious debate within Europe.
And the pressures of the war are showing up in other ways, too. Manpower shortages in Ukraine seem to be leading to some pretty desperate measures.
Yes, this bizarre story involving Dmitry Pishikov. He apparently used to be a driver for the actress Angelina Jolie.
What happened to him?
He reported being stopped at a military checkpoint in Ukraine. He was told he just needed to go to a recruitment center to clarify some details, supposedly would be released quickly.
But that's not what happened.
No. Once there, he was allegedly detained and told he was being immediately sent for military training, basically conscripted under false pretenses. Jolie apparently even visited the center trying to intervene.
Wow, that sounds coercive, deceptive even.
It's been heavily criticized, but it really highlights the intense pressure the Ukrainian military is under to find more soldiers as the war drags on. These aggressive tactics suggest significant manpower challenges.
Okay, shifting our focus now to West Africa, specifically the Sahel region. The situation in Mali sounds incredibly dire.
It really is descending into chaos. Militant groups, primarily linked to al-Qaeda, have effectively blockaded the capital city, Bamako,
How?
by controlling the major highways coming in from neighboring countries like Senegal and Ivory Coast. They've cut off fuel deliveries for about 2 months now.
The impact must be devastating. Crippling fuel shortages, economic activity grinding to a halt.
Exactly, and immense fear among the population. The militants are demonstrating their power in brutal ways. There was a shocking public execution of a TikTok influencer.
A TikTok influencer.
Yes, a woman named Mariam Sis, apparently quite popular with around 90,000 followers. She was abducted in a town called Tonka and publicly executed in the town square.
Why? What was she accused of?
The fighters accused her of spying for the Malian army. Whether that's true or not, the execution was clearly meant as a terrifying message. Defy us, or even just speak out, and this is what happens. It shows the terrifying degree of control these groups now exert and the collapse of state authority in huge parts of the country.
Just awful. And finally, in this section, we have extremely serious allegations coming out of Sudan.
Yes, from the Darfur region in western Sudan. The Sudan Doctors Network is accusing the paramilitary group, the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, of atrocities in the city of El Fasher.
What are they accusing the RSF of?
Of actively trying to conceal evidence of mass killings, potentially amounting to genocide. They allege the RSF is burning bodies and burying them in mass graves following their violent takeover of parts of the city.
To hide the scale of the killing.
That's the accusation. The violence is reportedly heavily targeted along ethnic lines, particularly against the Zagawa people. This has forced tens of thousands, estimates are around 82,000 people, to flee El Fasher under perilous conditions.
Fleeing targeted violence, possibly ethnic cleansing. It echoes the earlier horrors in Darfur, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. There are widespread fears that the patterns of racially motivated violence and mass displacement that characterized the Darfur conflict years ago are recurring, with the RSF implicated as the main perpetrators this time. It's a deeply alarming situation.
All right, let's bring our focus back to the United States. The big domestic story recently was, of course, the government shutdown, which dragged on for, 40 days?
40 days, the longest in U.S. history. It created a huge amount of uncertainty and disruption.
But it seems like there was finally a breakthrough, a deal to end it.
Yes, thankfully. A bipartisan group of senators managed to push through a deal to temporarily reopen the government. It provided full-year funding for some departments, but, the bigger budget battles are still looming. It was more of a ceasefire than a final peace treaty.
Still, ending the immediate crisis. But the impact of those 40 days was real. We heard warnings about air travel.
Very serious warnings. The Secretary of Transportation said that if the shutdown continued much longer, staffing shortages at the Federal Aviation Administration, air traffic controllers, safety inspectors would force them to reduce U.S. flights to just a trickle. We already saw thousands of cancellations because of the uncertainty and staffing issues.
Just chaos for travelers, and maybe even more critically, the impact on food aid.
Yes, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, what used to be called food stamps. This provides essential food aid to millions of low-income Americans.
And the shutdown affected that.
It did. The administration told states they had to immediately undo efforts they'd made to ensure full SNAP benefits were paid out for November, basically citing shutdown protocols. This caused widespread confusion and tremendous anxiety for families relying on that aid to buy groceries. Just imagine suddenly not knowing if you can feed your kids next week because of political deadlock in Washington.
It really brings home the human cost of that kind of political brinkmanship, doesn't it? Using essential services as leverage.
Absolutely. And speaking of politics and money, President Donald Trump rolled out a pretty specific economic promise recently.
What was that?
He pledged a financial dividend for Americans, funded by revenues from tariffs imposed on imported goods. He said it would be at least $2,000 per person.
A check in the mail, essentially, funded by tariffs.
That's the idea. He also specified it would exclude high-income people, framing it as a direct benefit for working and middle-class families, paid for by taxes on foreign goods. He claims these tariffs bring trillions into the U.S. Treasury.
But isn't the whole legality of those tariffs being challenged?
Yes, that's the huge caveat. There's a major case currently before the Supreme Court arguing that these tariffs are essentially an unconstitutional tax on American consumers and businesses because they raise the price of imported goods.
So the funding source for this proposed dividend might disappear depending on how the court rules.
Exactly. Trump himself acknowledged that an unfavorable ruling would require a contingency plan and warned it could be economically damaging. So it's a big promise tied to a very uncertain legal outcome.
Interesting. While all that political and legal wrangling was happening, how did the markets react when it looked like the shutdown was finally ending?
Oh, the relief was palpable. Stock futures jumped immediately. The Dow, S&P 500, NASDAQ all saw significant gains. It was a clear signal of investor confidence returning, just knowing the basic functions of government wouldn't grind to a complete halt.
And what about cryptocurrency? Did that react too?
Even more dramatically, actually. Bitcoin surged, breaking past $106,000 according to the reports we saw. Ethereum, XRP, other major coins also saw big jumps.
Wow, $106,000 for Bitcoin. So it wasn't just stock market relief, but maybe a broader sense that systemic risk was receding.
I think so. It reflects relief across the financial spectrum, that the political dysfunction, while damaging, wasn't going to trigger a full-blown economic meltdown. Stability, even temporary stability, was cheered loudly.
Okay, while the U.S. was sorting out its shutdown, other political controversies were brewing elsewhere. In Indonesia.
Yes, a really contentious move by President Prabowo Subianto. He awarded the title of National Hero to Suharto.
Suharto, the former dictator, who ruled for decades.
The very same. Ruled from 1967 to 1998. His regime is infamous for widespread human rights abuses, mass killings, rampant corruption. Just a brutal legacy.
So making him a national hero, that must have caused uproar.
Huge protests erupted immediately. Human rights groups, democracy activists, families of victims, they see it as a blatant attempt to rewrite history, to whitewash the crimes of the dictatorship. Serious concerns about the direction the country might be heading under Prabowo.
And tensions rising in Northeast Asia, too, between China and Japan.
Yes, Beijing reacted very sharply to comments made by Japan's Prime Minister, Sanae Takaichi.
What did she say?
She suggested that a potential conflict or crisis involving Taiwan could be seen as a serious threat to Japan's own survival.
Implying Japan might get involved militarily, perhaps alongside the U.S.
That was the clear implication. And China's foreign ministry came down hard, condemning her remarks as interference in China's internal affairs, a violation of the One China principle that Japan officially acknowledges. They said it seriously damaged relations and undermined regional stability. Just another flare-up in the ongoing tensions over Taiwan's status.
And finally, a deeply concerning security development reported out of India.
Yes. Authorities in the state of Gujarat arrested 3 men alleged to be operatives of the Islamic State, or ISIS.
ISIS operatives in India? What were they planning?
Something potentially horrific. One of the arrested men was a doctor, and he was reportedly preparing ricin poison.
Ricin. That's incredibly toxic.
Extremely. And they weren't just making it. They had apparently conducted surveillance of crowded public places. Reports mentioned locations like the huge Azadpur Mandi fruit and vegetable market in New Delhi, another market in Ahmedabad, and even an office associated with a prominent Hindu nationalist group in Lucknow.
So scouting targets for a potential mass casualty attack using poison.
That appears to be the plot they uncovered. A sophisticated and terrifying plan for a biochemical terror attack in densely populated civilian areas. A major security alert.
Okay, let's wrap up our deep dive today by looking at the intersection of climate change, the chaos it can unleash, and sometimes the breakdown of societal order and integrity that seems to follow. We start with the big UN climate conference, COP30, held in Belém, Brazil.
Right. And the context for this conference was pretty stark. The United Nations issued a warning right beforehand. Over the last decade, a staggering 250 million people have been displaced from their homes globally due to weather-related disasters.
250 million, that's almost the population of the US, just in 10 years.
Puts it in perspective, doesn't it? So Brazil's president, Lula da Silva, he opened COP30, calling it the Conference of Truth, really urging delegates to confront climate denialism head-on and focus on concrete action, not just talk.
A strong call to action. Wasn't there some controversy surrounding Brazil itself right as the conference started?
There was. A major one. Almost simultaneously with Lula giving this speech about climate action, his government authorized new oil drilling exploration in parts of the Amazon rainforest.
Hey, authorizing Amazon oil drilling while hosting the Global Climate Summit?
Slight chuckle. The timing was awkward, to say the least. It immediately raised questions globally about Brazil's actual commitment versus its rhetoric. It perfectly encapsulates the central dilemma, doesn't it? Especially for developing nations, the pressure for economic development and energy security often clashes directly with environmental protection goals.
And were developing nations making demands at the conference?
Yes, a group called the Like-Minded Group of Developing Countries, or LMDCs,
Yeah.
were pushing hard for separate, dedicated negotiations, specifically about climate finance. They feel that past promises of funding from richer, developed nations haven't been met, the targets were too low, and the mechanisms for actually delivering the money are inadequate. They want concrete financial commitments and clear plans.
So, the familiar tension between urgency, national interests, and financial responsibility continues. And the real-world impacts of climate change keep hitting hard, like Super Typhoon Fung-wong in the Philippines.
Yes, a powerful storm. Sustained winds hitting around 185 kilometers per hour, I believe. It caused significant devastation, particularly on the main island of Luzon.
Fatalities, displacement.
Tragically, yes. Reports indicated at least 4 deaths, and something like 1.4 million people were displaced from their homes due to flooding and wind damage. It just underscores the extreme vulnerability of that region to these increasingly intense typhoons. Massive resources needed for evacuation, shelter, and recovery every time one hits.
And extreme weather events aren't just about wind and rain. There was a tragic incident in Tenerife, in the Canary Islands.
Right. This wasn't a storm, but a sudden, unexpected tidal surge. A large wave, or a series of waves, struck coastal areas.
Catching people completely off guard.
Completely. It resulted in 3 deaths and injured about 15 other people, mostly tourists and locals near the shoreline. It highlights the unpredictable nature of coastal hazards, maybe exacerbated by changing sea levels or unusual weather patterns driving these surges. A need for better warning systems, perhaps.
And maybe the most insidious link between climate change and daily life, the spread of disease. We're seeing disease vectors moving into places they never used to be.
Exactly. Like the Andes aegypti mosquito. This is the primary mosquito that carries viruses like dengue fever, Zika, chikungunya.
And it's been found somewhere new, somewhere surprising.
Grand Junction, Colorado, in the U.S. This is a place that historically has cold winters which normally kill off these tropical mosquitoes.
But not anymore.
Apparently not consistently enough. The data shows Colorado had a record low number of freezing days last year, only 17. The warming trend means the mosquitoes can now survive the winter there, establish populations, and breed.
Bringing dengue fever, a serious tropical disease, to the Rocky Mountains.
Potentially, yes. It's a major public health concern. And it's part of a global trend. Dengue cases worldwide have increased something like 20-fold since the year 2000. Climate change is literally redrawing the map for infectious diseases by changing the habitats of the creatures that carry them.
That's deeply unsettling. Okay, finally, let's look at a few stories that point to cracks in maybe more organized systems. Sports integrity, prisons, starting with baseball.
Yeah, a significant scandal hitting Major League Baseball, MLB. 2 pitchers for the Cleveland Guardians, Emmanuel Place was a star closer, and Luis Ortiz were indicted.
Indicted for what?
Accepting bribes to manipulate their performance in games, specifically related to prop bets.
Prop bets, like betting on whether a specific player will get a strikeout in a certain inning or throw a certain number of pitches.
Exactly, those kinds of micro bets. The allegation is they took money to intentionally perform badly on specific pitches or plays to ensure certain bets paid out.
Wow. That strikes right at the heart of the game's integrity. especially with sports gambling becoming so widespread and legal now.
It raises huge questions. How do you protect the integrity of professional sports when there's so much money flowing through legal betting channels, creating incentives for corruption like this? A major headache for MLB and other leagues.
And problems within institutions aren't limited to sports. We saw extreme violence erupting in an Ecuadorian prison.
Yes, in Machala prison, down in El Oro province near the border with Peru, a massive riot broke out.
Resulting in fatalities.
Horrifically, yes. Reports said 27 inmates died, mostly from asphyxiation, possibly due to fire or tear gas in enclosed spaces, and another 4 were shot during clashes between rival gangs or perhaps with guards.
Just another indicator of the deep crisis in Ecuador's prison system, overcrowding, gang control.
It seems to be. Ecuador has faced repeated, incredibly violent prison riots in recent years. It points to a systemic failure of the state to maintain control and provide safe conditions within its own penal institutions. Overcrowding and powerful gangs basically running things from the inside lead to these explosions of violence.
And issues of prison management, maybe of a different kind, surfaced in India, too.
In Bengaluru.
Yeah, this was less about violence and more about, well, privilege and lack of oversight. A video went viral.
What did it show?
It showed inmates inside the Parapana Agrahara Central Prison having what looked like a pretty lively party. Music playing, drinks, apparently enjoying themselves quite a bit.
A party inside a major central prison.
That's what the footage appeared to show. And the allegation was that some of these inmates were high-profile convicts receiving special VIP treatment.
So raising serious questions about corruption, preferential treatment, and just basic security and management within the prison. Exactly. If inmates can apparently throw parties with contraband like that, it suggests a significant breakdown in discipline, oversight, and maybe integrity among the prison staff. It caused quite a stir, understandably. #tag outro. So as we wrap up this deep dive, the picture that emerges is one of just stark contrasts, isn't it? On one side, you have these incredible leaps in understanding, finding potential biosignatures on failed stars, realizing reality itself might not be computable, personalizing medicine down to the DNA level.
Truly breathtaking progress, solving puzzles we couldn't even conceive of asking a few decades ago, but then running right alongside that.
Is this persistent, grinding reality of human failure. Political gridlock that shuts down governance and threatens food aid, brutal wars fought over infrastructure and territory, horrific violence driven by ethnicity or extremist ideology, systems failing whether it's prisons or ensuring the integrity of sports.
Exactly. The data stream we waded through shows humanity capable of figuring out the universe's deepest secrets, while simultaneously struggling, often failing, at basic cooperation, humanitarianism, and effective governance. It's like we're becoming gods and fools at the same time.
And that's the core challenge for you as you try to make sense of the world, recognizing that these two seemingly contradictory trends, incredible progress and incredible chaos, aren't sequential. They're happening now, concurrently. They define the very unstable, very dynamic equilibrium of our time.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. Mull this over. In the same period, the United States came close to crippling its own air travel system and yanked food aid from vulnerable families over a political funding dispute. While scientists were seriously debating evidence suggesting the fundamental nature of the universe might be non-computable, what does it tell us about ourselves, about humanity, that we wield the intellectual power to probe the very fabric of existence, yet remain so demonstrably, consistently prone to tripping over our own feet through self-inflicted political division and social disruption?
Enjoying Artificially Informed.
Hit subscribe and share it with a friend.
From the left, the right, and straight from the algorithm.
Thank you.
That's it for today's Artificially Informed.
Nope. Thanks for spending your time with us.
Yeah.
Stay sharp, stay curious. See you next time.